Helios Flight 522, or the Ghost Plane. What caused the crash of this plane? It's been 17 years since the crash of Helios Airways Flight 522, and it's still one of the most unusual and shocking aviation accidents of 21st century. It involved a Boeing 737 that crashed in eastern Greece. But what exactly caused the crash of this ghost plane? Helios Airways was a low-cost airline based in Cyprus. From 1998, it operated both scheduled and charter flights from the island nation to various European and North African destinations, stretching from Dublin to Cairo. One of the Helios scheduled destinations was the Czech capital, Prague, and it flew there from Larnaca under the flight number ZU522. This flight also featured an intermediate stopover in the Greek capital, Athens. Its scheduled departure time from Larnaca was 0900 local time, and on August 14, 2005, it took to the skies just 7 minutes later. So how did the accident begin? Just 5 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft's cabin altitude warning horn sounded, prompting the crew to halt the climb. The plane at this point was at an altitude of 12,040 feet. However, the sound was identical to the takeoff configuration warning, and the crew disregarded it, believing it to be this alarm instead. They were unaware of the loss of cabin pressure. Meanwhile, oxygen masks had deployed upon reaching an altitude of 18,000 feet. By the time the operations center made its last contact with the crew at 0920, communication with the pilots was becoming very difficult. That was because they were beginning to experience symptoms of hypoxia due to loss of pressure. The aircraft stopped climbing at 34,000 feet at 0923. The aircraft then began circling on autopilot as the further loss of pressure had incapacitated the crew. With the pilots continuing not to respond, 2 Greek F-16 fighter jets were dispatched to intercept the flight. They located the plane at 11:24. The fighter pilots reported a curious scene in the cockpit. The captain's seat was empty, while the first officer was slumped unconscious over the controls. Shortly after they saw that, the plane left engine flamed on due to fuel exhaustion, causing it to descend. Then Andreas Prodromo appeared, the flight attendant, who was unable to regain control of the plane, but he was heroically able to turn it away from Athens during the descent, preventing ground casualties. Unfortunately, the fate of 115 passengers and 6 crew was sealed. All of them lost their lives when Helios Airways Flight 522 crashed into the mountainous grounds near Grammatiko, Greece at 12:04. But what was the cause? It was found that an engineer had carried out a pressurization leak check earlier that day. This involved the engineer setting the pressurization system to manual to avoid running the engines. Upon completing the check, they forgot to reset the pressurization system to auto, which ultimately led to the loss of pressure that incapacitated the flight's crew. Helios Airways eventually permanently suspended its remaining charter flights in November that year and quit to exist as an airline thereafter.